Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from cardswire.com, the NFL wire site that comes from the USA Today NFL Wire. With me and for episode 687 in our second show of the week as we look ahead to this Cardinals' second preseason game is Seth Cox, my co-host from revengeofthebirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. Seth, we have a relatively healthy Cardinals squad. They had their joint practice today on Thursday as we're recording late Thursday night, and we've got the preseason game against the Denver Broncos, and we have Sean Payton to thank because Jonathan Gannon doesn't like to spill the beans. He said, "Oh, we don't know what his plans are." Like, he's just lying to us. He's just coach lying to us. We don't know what our plans are for the starters, and then Sean Payton came out after practice and said. And it made it sound like that was a gentleman's sit the starters agreement, that with save a few, starters won't be playing, which is what we predicted when we spoke last week, and we talked earlier that when we had the show earlier this week, because the Cardinals have never played their starters after their joint practice. Does that surprise you? I mean, that's not what we're going to talk about the whole show, but that's I guess the newest thing that we got from today.
No, it's one of those situations that you have the ultra competitive joint practice, right? And then one team is basically going to bench their starters, and you, like, as the other team, what are you going to get out of that? What would you get out of that? These practices are probably better than any preseason work that they're going to get, right?
In many ways, yeah, because you have the controlled thing, and I've always thought, and I've heard this from coaches, is like, sure, you could play your starters, but you actually put your starters a little at risk if they're lining up against second team guys, because who are those second and third team guys? They can be overzealous guys looking to get to the roster and play a little out of technique. And when you play out of technique, you get people hurt.
Yeah, and that's a problem, and that's something that happens, and not just that, but like those second and third guys, let's be honest, they're trying to make a roster, right? And they've got a little more to play for. They're a little more aggressive than they probably need to be, and that ends up being one of those things where you just don't want to put guys in a position against players that are desperate. And I know that kind of sounds odd and weird, right? But like, desperate players can do desperate things.
Yeah. Well,
and like you said,
what do you learn?
Yeah, right.
And what do you learn by having your starters play second stringers? That's kind of a no-win situation. Like, they look really good, well, obviously, and then if they don't look good, then everyone's like, oh, they suck.
Right,
Imagine
exactly.
if Kyler Murray, no matter, like, even if it was just a great play by the defender, if Kyler Murray threw an interception against backups, oh my gosh, the social media.
Right. And so it's just one of those situations where it's just, you don't need to put those guys in that position and in turn, have these guys in a position to get hurt, or to put them in, put them in a situation where failure is I don't want to say catastrophic because that's probably hyperbole, right? But like you said, like, oh, Tyler throws an interception. Oh my God! Oh, against the backups, like what is happening? Or Paris Johnson Jr. struggles to stop.
The discourse that would just be constant. It'd be the worst.
Yeah. So it's just it's one of those things.
Well, what we wanted to talk about in this show, there's three basic things as we got the preseason game coming up. We have one, obviously, that we have Budda Baker, top 100, Calais Campbell talking about his future in the NFL. And then what do we want to see in the preseason game 2? So let's start with Budda. Going through the NFL top 100 as they have been doing the slow burn with this, revealing 2 players Monday through Friday for 9 weeks. But we're now in the 30s. And I'll be honest, Seth, if you recall, when it was Josh Sweat and early in the 90s and number 95, I wondered if Budda was going to be in the top 100 this year, because he had, since 2021, had fallen further back and further back and further back. And like, even though he had a great season, I wondered if he wouldn't make the cut. Not so. Not only did he make the cut, he made a 55 spot leap from number 89 in 2024 to be in the NFL top 100 for the 6th straight year at number 34. One, how surprised were you? One, that he was in it, and two, that he is as high as he is.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the second highest ranking of his career. And he had a good season last year, but that was, I think, his second team All-Pro season. Obviously, he's been to a bunch of Pro Bowls at this point. So that was his second team All-Pro season. 2021 was the other, so that would be the list of 2022. His best season, unquestionably, was 2020. Where he was, I think, ended up at 29 that year, or was he top 20 that year?
He made the top 20.
That's right.
It was incredible, the leap because he was 97 in 2020, barely making it, and then he had that season and he was all the way to number 19. Because that was an awesome season for him.
So last year was his second or third best year overall as a player, and he's in his the later stages of his prime. Obviously, the tackles last year were insane, going to 164 tackles, 95 solo tackles, second most of his career. Highest seasons in his career for tackles for loss. Something that's important, right, for a guy that plays like he does, right? Because he comes downhill and he's expected to play as a linebacker a lot of times. So 10 tackles for loss for a safety is huge. Most in his career. Again, the one thing that's always going to keep him away, and it's no coincidence that his 2 best seasons are the seasons where he had, interceptions, right? Like, that'll always be kind of the bugaboo with him of on-ball production. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We don't need to go over it anymore. But, you look at it, only, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but only 5 passes defense, in his AP first team a year. He had 6 passes defense to go along with 2 interceptions and a forced fumble. And then in the 2021 season, he had 3 interceptions with 7 passes defense. So that'll always hit. His lack of production and coverage will always be the reason that he may not be the best safety in the league, but he sure as hell is one of the top 5. I mean, it's
absolutely. And it what I love about this, and it makes sense. And it makes sense that in the top 100, you see essentially the Pro Bowlers, right? And people bag on the Pro Bowl all the time. because of the players that bounce. And it's because when they actually get to the Pro Bowl games, you get sometimes are the second string, the second and third replacements. But I will say this. This is something I say about the Pro Bowl voting. It might be the most valuable one because it's the only one where it's not just fans and it's not just media. The Pro Bowl, for their all-star game, it's 1/3 fans, 1/3 coaches, and 1/3 players. And the one thing we see about Budda Baker is that anything this offseason that looks anything analytically, media, safety list, analytical, he gets no analytical love because he doesn't have a tangible impact on the passing game to be one of the great safeties, as you said. But what I love about this ranking and the fact that he makes the Pro Bowl year after year and the fact that he's been in the top 100 players for the last 6 years, game recognizes game. And that's what it is. The player, so while analytics don't love Budda, football guys understand his impact. And what makes him unique is that while he plays a safety, he plays what no other safety in the NFL does what he does. So he isn't Brian Branch. He's not Xavier McKinney. He's not picking off 6-7 passes and knocking but because he's doing something that he does better than any other safety, he plays like a linebacker, and he does it at his size, and he does it with elite play speed. If you watch his tape, there is no hesitation about his game. He's incredibly intelligent. He takes great angles, and one of the best things now, the guys that were on the video that the NFL put out, Kyron Williams, physical Rams running back, he doesn't understand. Kyron is like, I don't get it. A guy his size, how he can hit me on my thigh, hit through my thigh board and drop me. Like, I can't gain yards after that. It's like most guys, most defensive backs, you can brush off. Budda, with the way he plays, he drops players immediately. And maybe maybe because that is what he's so good at, that we are missing the down the field deep safety play, because I'm sure he can do that. We saw that a little bit before, but when you got a guy like Jalen Thompson who does that better, that's more his range out in deep coverage and his sureness to be able to catch up to things after the fact. I think a lot of analytic people miss the fact that Budda is unique, and it's fantastic to see this because he is the heart and soul of this team. He had such a big year last year, and extending the contract. I always wonder though. The one thing with Budda I wonder, because the way he plays, at what point is the body going to give in? We wondered 2 years ago if that was happening, and then last year he was fantastic again. Like, at his frame, is what's going to happen? Is he going to have to transition to a deep safety at some point? Because he does have some, like, we know, if we remember back out when he came out of college, there was the one knock on him. He didn't have the on-the-ball production. He didn't have the good hands. And we've seen him drop interceptions as a pro, but that doesn't mean you're not making plays. Do you think that he's going to be able to maintain this style of play, this in-the-box type thing, like quasi-linebacker type thing, for another 2-3 years?
Yeah, and that's what the question is, right? How long can a guy at his stature and his size go? It's interesting because, I talk about stuff like this all the time, but when you're talking about 5'10", 195, so he's probably, he might be 5'10", right? Like, we know that there's that stuff's fibbing all the time. It seems that he's a guy that obviously takes care of himself. Like, that's such a big deal for whether it's guys that size or how they play, things of that nature. he seems to be in excellent shape all the time. Like we haven't seen that. That was something that we talked about with Tyrann Mathieu too, as well, right? Like these guys, despite being diminutive in terms of size, they take care of themselves. They are able to lift and play at a level that is, not similar to how other people that size play. And so the question will always become like, can you, how long can an outlier, because that's what Budda is, let's be honest, with his playing style, his size, that stuff, how long can an outlier go for? And again, have to be really, really frank. The fact that he's had 8 years already is pretty unbelievable, if we're being completely honest, right? Like that is a great career for any football player. So he's entering year 9. And so we'll see how that goes. And you look at a guy like Mathieu, who just retired. 3-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. Obviously, Budda's got him in terms of Pro Bowls. Ty has him in terms of AP first team All-Pros, and Mathieu had up and down seasons, especially coming off the injuries and things of that nature. So when you look at,
played on those great Chiefs teams too,
right,
that also helps,
right, and he won a Super Bowl, right? Like, so that all of that matters. When you look at all of that and you say, okay, you got 12 years of Mathieu, and the last 4 were progressively less impressive. Let's put it that way. You look at Ty and you go, okay, he's right around that age, or sorry, Budda. He's right around that same age as when Ty started to have the downfall. Now, the one difference being what? Budda hasn't had those major injuries. Ty came into the league with the ACL already. Obviously, we all remember 2015. Struggled with injuries in 2014 as well. So like issues there. But after the 2016 season, Ty rarely missed games. So
it was it was Ty with Tyrann. It was interesting because the year before they cut him and he ended up signing with Houston, he looked like just like there was nothing special about it. And then the next year they played well in Houston, and he reached that next level of play where he was consistently good again, making plays, kind of like he was with the Cardinals. He was really good. I think he was a little less dynamic, but smarter, and he got a little bit bigger because he was a kind of a true nickel. He was undersized coming out of college. But yeah, with Budda, like I want to know are they gonna keep using him like that, or will he have to?
I just don't, and I'm not being rude because I really don't mean this in a negative way, but I don't know if he can transition to be that. Like you look at Ty early in his career, right? 2 interceptions, 1 interception, 5 interceptions, and then went to KC 4, 6. Like Budda's high in a season's 3. Like that's just not his game. But that's what I'm saying.
And it's because Ty, the one thing he was always a nickel too. Now Budda can play the nickel. He was their nickel in 2018, but he also hasn't played nickel in years. Which in the nickel you have more opportunities to make on ball things. And the truth is that they give Budda a lot of freedom, and the reason why they can go with their light, well, it's their big nickel where they can when they keep their 5 up front, basically they take a linebacker off the field, is because they trust Budda to be able to handle those linebacker-ish type duties in terms of physicality.
Yep. And so my thing is, I think he's probably got, and again, this is just like speculative, like nothing that we can really base it off of. But I think he's got 2 more years of high level play like we saw last year. So, probably in that, we'll say 30 to 75 range of players. I think he's got 2 more years of that, and then he'll start to have the fall off because he doesn't have those injuries or those leftovers of his own, right? That Matthew came with. So those things matter when you're talking about that and like longevity and things of that nature. So I think, like I said, I think he's got 2 more high level years where he's, a true difference maker. And then from there, it'll probably start to be a not a sudden, but a steady, downgrade in play. The thing that, and again, we can't like expect this or predict it, I guess the best way to say it. The reality is like at his size, any type of injury could derail it immediately. So, because like you said, that's the style of play. So when you're talking about style of play, all of that is just so different than any other player. And the only reason I talk about Ty is because at least Ty was like his size, right? 5'9", 190. So like they were similar in terms of size and that nature. And so when you look at that, that's really one of the few guys recently that we can base it off of, and how that trajectory went for Matthew. Like I said, I'm giving Budda like a 2-year boost, basically, of like, you haven't had those injuries in your past, so you won't have as quick of a fall off, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it is great to see how much respect that the players in the NFL give him. We knew that the coaches do, because one reason why he doesn't have a lot of on-ball production, what do teams do? When they see him on one side, they don't throw that direction. Not because, I don't know if it's because they think he's going to pick it up, but I think he just impacts coverage so much, and the fact that he might hits players so hard.
Well, and that's, again, we're like, it's just such a different style. But again, there's those unicorns. I mean, we've talked about, and again, I don't want to put him in this class. So like, I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer. I'm not saying he's going to, any of that. But like, you look at a guy like Ray Lewis, right, that played at that style of ruggedness and physicality for so long. And he had the longevity that you rarely see out of an inside linebacker, right? And so but again, those are outliers. So like, we're getting into, and he's always been an outlier. I mean, any guy that, like you said, plays at his size, the way he plays, the physicality he plays, he is an outlier. But when we talk about now longevity, that becomes another conversation, because that's just not, bodies just aren't meant to take that pounding for that long, right? Guys that size, that play with that physicality, and you can go back to, maybe perhaps the greatest ever, right? And that was Troy Polamalu. And again, a little bit different in terms of stylistic, but Troy was also a kamikaze, right? Like he hit with reckless abandon, and he had his last first team All-Pro season in 2011. I believe that was the year Pittsburgh went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Packers, but don't quote me on that. I'm not a Steelers aficionado, but so like that's nope, that was the year they lost to the Broncos, so I was wrong. Oh, that was the Tim Tebow year. Okay. And so, but 30. So again, we're talking about He won a Defensive Player of the Year in 2010. Was an All-Pro, first-team All-Pro in 2011 at ages 29 and 30. That's where Budda's at. And again, up to this point, Troy had a better career. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying he's the same level as Troy Polamalu, but again, similar in terms of size, stature, playing style. That is a guy we can look at and go, again, that guy was an outlier, right? He was an outlier. And so those are the ones we have to use, because what Budda has done for his career is special. What he continues to do will just kind of, up the ante of how special of a player he was.
Yeah. Coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Bizarre Cardinals Talk on the Web, another long timer for the Cardinals who is back, Calais Campbell. So we talked a little bit about his future, how much longer he's going to play. That's coming next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Bizarre Cardinals Talk on the Web. Calais Campbell, talking to reporters, was asked about his future, and the sound bite that's going out, the quote that's being, is that someone was asked, "Is this your last year?" And he says, "I mean, I'll be so very surprised if it's not, but I try not to think about the future, just stay present. I'll be very surprised if it's not." I mean, that as long as he's been in the NFL, he's the elder statesman, as I think Ian Rappaport put it on Twitter, in the NFL. It's not surprising, but let's be honest. And there is the other thing. He kind of walked it back a little bit. He said, "Well, I felt that last year was likely the last couple of years. So I'll put the disclaimer out there. Like last year at this time, I felt exactly the same way I feel now." And so while the quote that's being used is that I'll be surprised if this isn't my last year, Howard Balzer, who wrote the article, he's, pay attention to the end part. So he walked it back a little bit and said, but is it? The fact that he admits that a year ago he felt the same way. Now, granted, he didn't say that. But let's be honest, the second he signed with the Cardinals, that was a swan song, wasn't it? That was 100% like, oh, he's coming back with the hope, just like, again, we've kind of talked about the storylines. Like, wouldn't it be great to bring it full circle? My first year in my rookie year, we went to the Super Bowl. Wouldn't it be cool in my last year then go back to the team that started it and go to the Super Bowl again?
Yeah, and that would be incredible to watch and to see. And it'll be interesting because you look at the list of guys ahead of him in terms of sacks, career sacks, and he's right on the cusp of being a Hall of Fame player, right? And I know people will be like, wow, was he really? But that's the thing, is you look at the guys ahead of him, he's about 10 total sacks away from kind of it'd be really hard for him not to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those situations where it probably is his last season, right? But let's just hypothetical and say he has a 7-sack season. And I know people will be like, 7 sacks at 39. Well, he had a 6.5 sack season in Atlanta 2 years ago and 5 sacks last year in Miami. Both of those lines are putrid comparative to what the Cardinals on paper should be able to put out this year. So, if he gets 7 sacks and is at 117.5 career sacks, and you look at it and you go, man, that 120-ish number is just sitting there holy cow, how hard would it be to not go and do that? So, it's just one of those things that you look at and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I mean, the longevity, the talent, the personality, Everything that he's done is just, he was just such a special player in his career.
Well,
And if it is his last year, I'm glad it's in Arizona. If
it is cool.
If
It
it's
is cool, especially if he has another, because if there's one thing that Calais has been, is that he's just been so consistently productive, except for like what I love about Calais' career. There isn't anything about his career at any point where you would have said he's one of the top 2, 3, 4, 5 defensive linemen in the NFL. Now, you might have argued that first Jacksonville year when he had the 14 something sacks, but even still, like there's been never any point in his career where you looked at him, he's like, he's a top 5 player at his position. But he's been so just incredibly productive for so long that he's turned that he's getting real Hall of Fame. Well, he's never been a great, but his career is great. And I will say this, and I think this is the business side of it. I think there was a part of Calais that thought that last year might have been his last year because the contract, because like you get to a certain age and the offers get lower. And last year he made he had a 1-year deal worth about $3 million to play with the Dolphins, and that's after he had an $8 million deal with the Falcons, and he signed a 3-year deal worth $31 million with the Ravens. And so you start, because business comes into the play. Like at his age, what's the cost? Like, what is the least amount that he's going to play for? Cardinals offered him $6 million this year between everything. And so, Larry talked about the same thing. Well, why wouldn't I play for another $11.5-12 million? Like at this point in his career, like what are you going to do after the NFL that you're going to make that much money? And so I think that was a part of it, which, we saw JJ Watt, the Cardinals paid him a lot of money. That Calais did not come back on a discount. He's making twice what he made last year.
No, yeah.
But it's still a good story. And $6 million for a guy who can produce what he's like, for 5 sacks, $6 million for a guy who is the ideal teammate. He's a great leader. He's great in the community. He's a great ambassador for the NFL and your franchise. That's a neat. Like it. Everyone talks about the intangible stuff. The fact of the matter is, he still plays ball really well.
Right, and that's the biggest thing. He's still a contributor, and that's why I think like it's not out of the realm of possibility. This guy goes for 6, 7, 8 sacks this year, and he's like, I think I got another year in me, right? And if you're the Cardinals, you go, yeah, I think I got another $6 million in me too, right? Like,
right, exactly. Give him the gentleman's Larry Fitzgerald deal, but for that, but and here's the thing. Say Calais gets 7, 8 sacks. What does that mean about this team? Because if he's doing that, this team is probably pretty good, and maybe they do go make a deep play. And if they do make the Super Bowl, win it or not,
that's probably the last ride, right? Exactly.
Yeah, they're like, all right, I'm not. It's perfect. It's a perfect wrap.
Well, and on the flip side of that too, right? If they lose in this, in the NFC Championship game, he might be like, on the flip side, he might be like, yep, I got to run it back one more time. Like we're right there. Like I truly believe we're right there. And so, again, we're talking hypotheticals, we're talking long-term outlooks, all of that jazz. However, like you look at it and you go, hey, that, if these things happen, why wouldn't he want to be back?
Yeah. Absolutely. Coming up next on the Rise of Zero podcast, it's our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's turn our attention to the preseason game where we won't see starters. What do we want to see in this game against the Broncos? That's coming up next on Rise of Red. We're back on the Res Receiver podcast, Best Our Cardinals talk on the web. Cardinals play the Broncos in Denver Saturday night, 6:30 Arizona time. What we can expect based on what Sean Payton said, not what Jonathan Gannon said, but there will be no starters. That means no Kyler Murray, no James Conner. I would dare say probably no Trey Benson. So the guys that they know are going to be their starters, and they have a little bit of experience, they're probably not going to play. Who's the starter who are the starters that might play for the Cardinals? I would dare say Max Melton, Will Johnson, and yeah, that might be it. Maybe Isaiah Adams, but I don't think they're going to risk putting him out there either. So if there's anything, I think the only young starters we see are Max Melton and Will Johnson, but maybe not even that.
Well, and I think after today, the joint practice where it sounded like the secondary struggled, it's interesting. It's interesting to think that maybe they do need it, right? Like maybe they do need those reps, but also to your point, wouldn't it, like, it would probably be even worse if they had a bad day against the Broncos, like 4th through 6th receivers, right?
That's true. That's true. There's also that possibility, but at least like I guess Max played a lot last year, but maybe Will Johnson, because he is a rookie. But that we've seen guys, they held them, like Darius Robinson played a handful of snaps last year against the Saints and didn't play again. They've done that before. So what'll be interesting is maybe that's so. Let's talk about this. What do we want to see then? Who are the guys that we want to see? How many of the receivers will sit out? Will it just be Harrison Wilson, or will it be Harrison Wilson, Zay Jones, and Greg Dortch that all sit? Now that'll be interesting to see to me.
Right. I think it'll be Harrison, Wilson, and Jones. I think Dortch will get some reps. From there, you look at it, and it's just tough to. I mean, we know we won't see Trey McBride, right? Like Trey McBride, James Conner, probably Trey Benson. Probably won't see any of those cats.
No, I don't expect to.
So we get a little Jacoby Brissett early, some Amari DiMercato early. Probably lots of Simi Fahoku's back, right? So
yes, so that'll be nice to see what Simi Fehoko is going to offer. That'll be nice to see.
Yeah, Simi
John
Fehoko
Gaines will be back in the lineup, so he'll get the start at center, and Hayden Conner will get probably the second round of unless they keep Conner at guard and they just go with a play two sides, and they'll just do two lines rather than three. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Since when you take you're not going to go first, second, third. It might just be second and third teams, and so you might only do 2 rotations.
Yeah. So getting to see Fehoko, Weaver, obviously more Taywon Palmer. Those are all going to be interesting. Defensively, like, do we think we'll even see like Dante Stills out there, especially with the injury situation?
That's a good question. I bet Dante. I would think that Dante and LJ, just because of the for straight numbers, maybe
a series,
but no Josh Sweat, no Zaven Collins, maybe Baron Browning, maybe, but I'm not even sure about that. But it might be Jordan Birch and Xavier Thomas starting if they're going to do 2 rotations. So like Birch and Thomas get the first half, and then Benton Whitley and Elliott Brown. Yeah, guys know. I know you guys don't know who they are, but I know who they are. They'll probably finish the game.
They're on the roster, guys.
No Mac, no Akeem. We'll probably see Owen Papo, a good healthy amount of him, and maybe that'll probably be healthy. I wonder if we'll even see much of Rabbit at
Yeah,
safety.
I was wondering that too. Like probably not. Probably a lot of Joey, or probably not even a lot of Joey Blunt if they're, if he's a special teams guy, right? Like
I think they'll have to play. I think they'll have to use, because if
you
you
don't think
take,
they'll just go Jamie Robinson, Keaton Crawford the whole time, and then Blunt will dress and like be the in case of emergency break glass type of guy. I mean, you could be right, but that means there's only 3 safeties on the roster, or like dressing out anyways, right?
yeah, then so I would bet that that Rabbit plays a little bit, because that's more a third preseason game, isn't that? That's kind of a more third preseason game strategy, where you have
Yeah,
your
he
third
might,
unit.
yeah. And
Basically, you run your third unit. You have your 47 to 50 players that you play, and it's just the back end guys.
yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they deploy it, because the ones we know, right, like the ones that we are actually interested in seeing, like I said, Fajoku and Weaver on offense. If they play Tip Ryman, does he catch the ball at all, or is he just continue to murder people when they're trying to move? We want to continue to see. We talked about Xavier Thomas this week already. Obviously want to see his progression and where he's at. Does he, beat out BJ Ojolari in terms of to start the season with BJ on the PUP list? Does Jordan Birch continue to press for reps with the first team defense? Not necessarily starting, but getting into the rotation. Elijah Simmons, we talked about Elijah Simmons. We're excited to continue to see him. We want to see Owen Papo. It's like, how does he recover? He had a really, really bad game on defense this week. Cody Simon, how much does he play? Like, is he kind of already locked into linebacker 3 right now? Those are all the interesting parts, because like you said, it's tough when you're like, one, you're short on the D line, so now you got to like dress extra D linemen, right? Because obviously Dalvin's hurt. Calais would never play in these early preseason games.
They're not going to play Darius.
And not going to play Darius with Walter.
Justin Jones isn't healthy. Walt's not.
So
yeah. It's going to be. You're going to start. You're going to start with Dante, LJ, and
Elijah, right?
Or PJ Mustafer, or one of those other guys, or Patrick Jenkins. So I bet Dante and LJ play.
They have to at least a quarter. At least a quarter.
Yeah, and then you go with the Patrick Jenkins, Elijah Simmons, PJ Mustafer, and Keon Bars, that guy too.
Yeah. Right, and do we see Roy Mbotake this week? Right,
like, I doubt it. I the guys that they signed this week, I doubt they see this week. Maybe it'll be next week, because they had 3 days. They had 3 days to do stuff, and probably today didn't get much work, so they're probably very, very limited playbook. Elijah Jones, and then the cornerbacks, so like the depth guys, Keitrell, Denzel Burke, and Elijah Jones are going to be guys to watch, because
Stephen Gilmore too. Stephen, and maybe
that's true.
Maybe even Darren Hall again.
Yeah, he'll definitely play, and he'll probably make plays. I'm interested, because if you're looking at the offensive line, who's the depth going to be? Because Kelvin Beacham's not going to play. Who are going to be the 3 to 4 guys that they keep on the roster? Because we know who the starters are. We know that their number 6 is Kelvin Beacham. We can guess that John Gaines is going to be their backup center if he's healthy. And then after that, how does Royce Newman look? Christian Jones, like, we don't know. Or is it going to be Josh Fryer? How does he look? Can he make the roster? That would be, especially with Jones going to be missing time, whatever that means. But yeah, so there's offensive linemen to watch for the depth. I don't think the running back situation is much to look at, because I think it's pretty locked in. Say what you want about DJ Dallas, when you listen to Jonathan Gannon talk about him as one of the war daddies in the locker room, it's going to take an insane push from a guy like Bam Wright to be able to push Dallas off the roster. And Zonovan is the guy who could do that because he was an elite kick returner in college.
Right. And so that's what you kind of look at, right? And like a guy like DJ Dallas is interesting. Like, how does he get up for a game like this? Right? Like, he's going to get some run. I mean, Bam Knight's going to get most of the carries. DJ Dallas and Michael Carter will probably start things off, and then Bam Knight gets the whole second half, right? But do you think Amari plays on Saturday? Genuinely, I'm trying to think.
I would think so. I think they'll
maybe a series with Jacoby.
Yeah, and maybe just because I think it's important in these cases because then it gives them the opportunity to play in the other roles that they don't really play in. So he's going to be the third down role, but
now
maybe
he's the starter.
Yeah, maybe he gets the starter reps for a little bit, and that's how he goes. So instead of being the third down back like he was last week, that he's the starter. DJ is the third down back, and then he comes out after a quarter. DJ and Michael Carter handle the duties, and then the second half, then it turns it over to Bam. I mean, this is, if you're listening, this is where you get football geekness, because preseason games are largely uninteresting, largely for most football fans. I look at these games and I see, if you ever watched the UFL in the spring, they look like preseason football games because they can be exciting, but they're guys that are definitely not starters. They're definitely not playing a lot. But these games, these final two games, these are the games that matter for the depth and the back end roster spots. Where do they find value? Clayton Tune's performance is going to be really, really important for him. He's not making the roster, but will he play well enough for another team to be interested in him, to claim him, or will he simply come back on the practice squad? And here's the thing. There's no guarantee that they would bring him. If there's another quarterback that they like more, they could sign that guy to the practice squad and claim Tune. It's not a lock. Now, do I expect Tune to be on the practice squad? Yes, but I think his playing time is going to be really important too.
Right, I would agree with that.
Anything else of note that you want to look for? That in terms of meaningful football for how the Cardinals play as his team, we're getting none of that this weekend. This is all about how do individual players do in different roles. That for me, that's all it is. Those are the stories that are going to come out of this. We can do our stock watch. We can do our roster projections, and based on who doesn't play, we can sort of pencil those guys into the roster, right?
Correct. I would agree with that.
And with that, that'll end this edition of the Rise Up C Red podcast of SR Cardinals Talk on the Web. We will be back next week to talk about, obviously, we'll be back next week, Tuesday, dropping on the Wednesday thereafter to talk about how the Cardinals and Broncos game went, who helped, who hurt themselves, and more. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon. Thanks for listening as always.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up Red C, be Red C Red, and of course, Rise Up C Red.